Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are putting on our architect hats. We're cracking open what feels like the most crucial blueprint for genuine enterprise transformation we've seen all year.
That's right. We're getting into the 2026 Techromap 4 PDF. And specifically, we are dissecting this one section that lays out the 7-layer enterprise agentic AI framework.
And it is dense.
Oh, it is. It's very structured, but it's absolutely essential reading if you're planning for the next, say, 2 years.
And this document, it's not just theory, is it? It feels more like a manual, a step-by-step security-first guide for organizations to get from these, experimental AI tools to fully autonomous, enterprise-grade digital employees.
Exactly. Our mission today is to unpack this roadmap for you. We really want you to understand the structured progression that's necessary to make these AI agents viable, safe, and actually impactful in a business.
Viable and safe. That seems to be the core philosophy here.
It is. Viability over novelty. This whole framework is about mapping how these foundational technologies become genuinely autonomous systems and, crucially, how to scale them without, inviting chaos.
It's not about what you can build.
No. It's about what you can build, secure, and sustain.
Okay, let's get into this architecture then. I think the starting point is really instructive. The framework doesn't kick off with the cool tech. It begins with the prerequisite. Layer 1 is security and governance.
And it's positioned visually as surrounding every other layer.
Right.
And that one decision tells you everything you need to know about enterprise adoption. It answers the one question every C-suite is asking: how do we trust this thing?
So control has to come before capability. If the AI has the power to act on its own, you better have the guardrails up first.
You absolutely must. The source material is emphatic. The governance has to ensure agents operate safely, ethically, and in strict compliance. But it goes beyond just, a passive audit. It demands that internal enterprise policies, risk controls, regulatory requirements, all of that is integrated from the moment of design, not as an afterthought.
Okay, let's pause there, because that feels like the difference maker. I mean, regulated companies have always had governance. What makes this Layer 1 so different from the compliance rules we've been following for decades?
It's a concept they call dynamic policy enforcement. So traditional systems might audit after the fact, or they rely on these static permissions. This framework says the governance layer has to be preemptive.
Preemptive. Give me an example of that.
Okay, think of an agent managing purchase orders. Dynamic policy enforcement means the system automatically restricts the tools and APIs that agent can even access in real time, based on the dollar amount, the context, the vendor, the regulations for that specific transaction.
So it's not just a fence around the field. It's an intelligent perimeter that's constantly changing its rules based on what the agent is trying to do right now.
That's it. And that preemptive control is what unlocks large-scale adoption. It builds trust before the agent even takes its first action. Control ensures assurance.
And only once those guardrails are up, then we can talk about the engine room.
Then and only then.
Which brings us to Layer 2 and Layer 3, what the document calls the brain and the muscle.
So Layer 2 is your foundational enterprise technologies. We're talking LLMs and RAG. The large language model, that's the raw reasoning capability, understanding instructions, forming outputs. It's the abstract thinker.
But the framework is really clear that a pure LLM isn't enough for real enterprise work. And that's where RAG comes in, retrieval augmented generation.
Yes. RAG is what transforms that general intelligence into what the document calls enterprise intelligence.
It's the tether to grounded truth.
That's the perfect phrase for it. It's so much more than just a smart search. With RAG, the agent is accessing internal proprietary data vector databases full of company policies, past support tickets, confidential reports. It's not just using its general training data.
And this is so crucial for you to grasp. If you skip RAG, your agent is smart, but it's basically uneducated about your specific business.
Right. It's like a brilliant new grad. The LLM is the brilliant grad.
Yeah.
RAG is the decade of specific proprietary corporate knowledge that allows them to actually function inside the company.
Yeah.
And it solves the hallucination problem, at least for internal facts.
And that builds trust, right?
Right.
If an agent's recommendation can be traced back directly to an internal policy document through that RAG layer, suddenly you have transparency, you have accountability in the reasoning.
Instantly.
Okay, so we've got security, we've got the corporate knowledge, now Layer 3, autonomous execution. This is the muscle. This is what makes it agentic and not just another generative AI tool.
This is the action layer. The framework demands autonomous decision-making and really robust tool integration. We're talking about the system independently taking action,
The what kind of action?
calling APIs, running data transformations,
Right.
logging into systems, all without a human needing to approve every single step.
The potential speed increase there is just enormous. Can you give us a detailed example of that independence? Because flagging a problem versus actually solving it is a huge leap.
Okay, let's take a complex supply chain. A normal tool flags a delay on a big shipment. An agent built on this framework. It detects the delay, it analyzes the downstream impact on 3 different fulfillment centers, it calculates a couple of rerouting scenarios, picks the best one for cost and time, and then, and this is the key, it independently executes that plan.
It does it itself.
It updates the ERP system, it issues new routing instructions via logistics APIs, and it notifies procurement. No human clicking yes in between.
That is true independence, but let me push back a bit on the viability here. If that agent messes up, reroutes $1 million of product to the wrong port, who's liable? How is that manageable?
And that is why the framework is circular. It constantly points back to layer 1. Independence is only granted if accountability is baked in. The source says 2 things are mandatory for layer 3. Robust audit trails and defined rollback capability.
Rollback capabilities, that's interesting.
Yeah. It means every action has to be logged, obviously. But the system also has to be designed to either immediately revert that action or provide an absolutely ironclad auditable log of the agent's logic. Why did it make that choice?
So you have to know not just what it did, but why.
Precisely. Which policy it followed, what data it used, what constraints led to that decision. That makes the agent a governed entity, not a rogue actor.
Okay, that makes the independence manageable. But action alone, even audited action, is blind without context. Pure muscle needs planning, foresight, some learning.
Perfect transition into layer 4, intelligence and memory. This is where the agent goes from just doing tasks to strategic thinking.
So this layer is about planning and reasoning, the ability to take a huge, abstract goal like optimize Q3 inventory levels and break that down into a sequence of executable steps for itself.
And crucially, this is where memory depth comes in. The framework says you absolutely need persistent long-term memory services, and these are distinct from the LLM's short-term context window.
Let's clarify that for everyone listening. What is the difference between working memory and what you're calling institutional memory for an agent?
Good question. The short-term context window is its working memory. Right. It holds the current prompt, the conversation, maybe the documents it just pulled up with RGA. It might forget all that 10 minutes later.
Right.
But persistent long-term memory that retains the outcomes of actions it took 6 months ago, facts it learned, critical context. It's stored in separate, dedicated services.
So this is what makes the agent actually get smarter over time.
Exactly. An agent with long-term memory recalls that a similar inventory optimization 6 months ago failed because a specific vendor had a shutdown. So when it tackles the Q3 problem, it adapts its new plan. It excludes that vendor or builds a contingency, all based on months-old failure data. It learns.
That adaptive capacity is the definition of scalable intelligence. It's not just a task engine anymore, it's a genuinely learning employee.
So now we have all the ingredients: security, the brain, the muscle to act, and the memory to learn. The next big challenge is, how do you scale this? How do you go from one smart digital employee to a whole intelligent organization?
And that takes us to layer 5, scaling intelligence. This is all about collaboration, multi-agent orchestration. If the previous layers built one good employee, this one builds a whole team.
And the mechanism here is specialization and a shared context, usually mediated through that long-term memory we just talked about. So instead of one giant agent doing everything, you have specialized agents, a data agent, a compliance agent, a notification agent, and they function as an integrated, resilient swarm.
An integrated swarm. That sounds powerful, but it also sounds like a management nightmare. How do you stop them from stepping on each other's toes?
The framework requires highly standardized communication protocols, basically APIs for agents to talk to each other. So a typical workflow might be: a data aggregation agent pulls a ton of customer data. It writes its raw output to a shared memory location.
And that action is a trigger.
It's a trigger. The compliance review agent sees it, wakes up, and starts its check. If it finds a data privacy risk, it doesn't just send an email to a human. It signals the first agent to rerun the process with a new filter.
So that internal feedback loop is what creates the resilience. It handles problems on its own, which speeds up the whole workflow massively.
It lets the system tackle these big cross-functional jobs that no single human or even a single AI could manage efficiently. And this is where the business impact really starts to show.
Which is a perfect lead-in to the payoff, layer 6, value realization. After all this architectural work, where does the framework say we should see the first measurable impact?
It highlights two primary areas. First is core internal functions, mostly IT operations and service management. We're talking about automating those tedious, complex tasks that slow down big companies.
And what are the metrics to watch for there?
The biggest one is a drastic drop in mean time to resolution, MTTR. An agent can instantly diagnose and fix things like complex network incidents or configuration drift. So your MTTR drops from hours to minutes. The network is fixed before a human even gets the alert.
And the second area is external facing, customer experience and virtual agents.
Yeah, and these are not the chatbots we all hate, because these agents have long-term memory from layer 4, grounded knowledge from layer 2, and they can execute actions from layer 3. They can handle a complexity that old systems just couldn't touch.
So they can initiate a refund, manage a complex account change, coordinate shipping, all while remembering the customer's history. That frees up your human staff for the really strategic, high-stakes problems.
It's tangible value. It just creates a whole new ceiling for operational efficiency.
Okay, so we've built the secure, intelligent, learning, scalable organization. We've realized the value. Now, layer 7. This is what makes the report feel like a real roadmap to the future. Emerging trends. This is where AI stops being a stack of tools and starts becoming an intelligent operating layer for the whole business.
The big trends here are platform-based orchestration and the formal rise of the digital employee. But the really critical structural piece that ties this whole thing together is the tighter convergence of identity, access, and trust.
The digital employee, that idea is profound, giving the agent a persistent role, accountability. But tell me more about that identity convergence. It feels like the final technical linchpin to make this all scale safely.
It absolutely is. I mean, think back to layer 3, autonomous execution. If agents are calling sensitive APIs or moving financial data, they can't be anonymous processes. They need an authenticated, non-repudiable digital identity, just like a human employee.
So you're basically mandating that organizations implement zero trust principles for AI.
Precisely. Zero trust for AI. Access is never just assumed. The agent has to constantly verify itself, and access is always granted on the principle of least privilege, only the permissions it absolutely needs for its defined role.
That sounds like a massive technical challenge, integrating an agent identity with your existing enterprise identity and access management systems.
It is a challenge, but that is the end goal of layer 7. A new, secure operating layer where the agent's digital identity dictates what data it can see, what tools it can use, and what actions it can execute, all tied back to its defined employee role. Every single action becomes traceable, governable, and verifiable. It creates a fully governed entity.
Without that identity convergence, autonomous agents just stay as, what, isolated proof of concepts?
Exactly. They can never scale securely in a regulated environment.
This has been a really deep, structured journey. Just to recap for you, we started with the foundation of trust, layer 1's security and governance. Then we moved to the brain and the knowledge base, the LLMs and RAG in layer 2 for grounded enterprise-specific reasoning.
Then the agentic magic came from layer 3, autonomous execution, giving the system the power to act. That was coupled with layer 4, intelligence and memory, which gave it the capacity to learn and plan strategically.
And we saw how layer 5 scales that capacity through multi-agent collaboration, that integrated resilient swarm, which then leads directly to layer 6, where you get real value in areas like IT operations and customer experience.
And finally, layer 7 sets that future stage. Agents become persistent digital employees, and it all rests on that critical convergence of identity, access, and trust. It moves AI from just being a tool to being a managed, integrated part of the organization itself.
That roadmap gives you a really comprehensive plan for navigating the next couple of years. But let's leave you with one final provocative thought, and it comes from that digital employee concept.
The framework makes it clear these agents will gain autonomous, auditable power. They'll become functional management tiers in certain workflows. So as this mixed human and agent workforce really starts to emerge, you have to consider, how are we going to restructure the boundary between human work and agent work? Where does human oversight begin and end?
And what new management skills will we need? Skills for auditing an agent's logic, defining incredibly granular policies, for making sure that identity convergence is working correctly. What skills will human leaders need to effectively manage this highly automated, intelligent workforce? That's the real challenge that sits on top of this entire 7-layer architecture.
Thank you for diving deep with us.
We'll see you next time.